Yeah. There we go. Hello. Hi. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, thank you. Good evening. What's going on? You guys look cozy.
Yeah, we're just kind of relaxing. We're not going to paint. We're just going to watch you tonight.
Okay. I should warn you now. It's going to be just like watching paint dry.
Okay. I've been painting all week, so I'm kind of taking a break and enjoying watching someone else paint.
Yeah. Okay. That's very good. And now, what kind of painting?
So, yeah.
I'm an oil painter.
We painting oils?
Yep.
Oh, good for you.
I just finished a piece, actually, a water paint.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's why you're going to be doing, I think, a boat too, a Gundalow, right? So.
Yep.
So that's I kind of used some of the colors you had mentioned in your that you thought would be good for tonight's painting. So I threw in that raw umber, which I wouldn't have done normally. I think you had.
Yeah, tonight's pretty much a monochrome. We only have 1 hour, and so I tried to keep it as simple as I could, and so, ready or not, here we come,
Nice. Yeah, hey, great. Have fun. That's what it's about, right?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I can't even thank you enough, Todd. Todd and I have been writing back and forth and back. And I think, we began, these Gundalow gatherings are actually gatherings that we hold in people's homes.
Yeah, that's what I was told initially. Right.
So because of COVID, we weren't allowed to do them, so we discovered this virtual platform, and they've been really successful. It's been wonderful. So I reached out to a couple of folks, and Todd, reached out back, and I was like, "Well, that'd be so nice, something interactive,
Very
well,
nice.
It's nice to keep the heritage and the culture alive, right?
Yeah.
Like we have it good here in Portsmouth. I feel like we're lucky dogs, so you got to give back.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi, Frank. Good to see you. Frank is a longtime supporter, volunteer, crew member, everything of the Gundalow.
Nice to meet you all. And Marcia is here. Hi, Marcia.
Hello. Hi, Todd. Hi, everyone. This is exciting.
It is. It's fun. Martha Burnham. I recognize your name. I don't know where. Nancy Wilson. I loved your music. I really did. It's fantastic. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm in Concord.
You're in Concord? Oh, wow. We got them from all over. That's so exciting. Dusty, Andy Goodell, and Melissa L. Excellent. Excellent. How many painters are here tonight? There's some dabblers. Oh, good. Good for you.
I'm a dabbler.
Dabbler.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, Rich just logged on, and he's got the
Yay!
the Gundalow. Or it says Marissa L.
Oh.
Okay. So tonight
Hey, Rich.
Hi, Rich. How are you?
Rich, you're still at the office. Are you going to stay there all night long?
Not all night.
Okay. Rich is our executive director. And
Nice to meet you, Rich.
Nice to meet you.
Todd and folks coming here. And
Nice to meet you.
Rich has had a full week. So.
Oh, nice. So is anybody actually painting tonight, or you're all just watching?
I'm going to paint.
Oh, good. Good for you. Excellent. Yeah.
I'm going to try.
Yeah. That's all we can ask for. Just have some fun with it. This is, I'm realistic about a 1 hour demo. I've done a bunch of 1 hour demos before, and usually I paint one of two ways. One is indirect method and then direct method alla prima. And I thought if it's going to be 1 hour, I better do it as quickly as possible. So I did an alla prima technique tonight. Alla prima just means in one shot. So it's essentially direct painting. But I was trained in art school to paint indirectly primarily, which is an old Renaissance technique. It goes back about 600 years, where the painting starts with a grisaille underpainting, and then we layer and glaze color over that. Well, there's certainly not enough time to do that. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just do the underpainting. But either way, I tried to pack as much information as I could in 1 hour. So hopefully it's fun. And if not, I recommend you all get a glass of wine or something, or a cocktail to help you get through it. And there you go. How many more are we waiting on there?
I think a couple more.
Oh, good. Excellent. So what other kind of guests have you had this year, Donata?
Goodness, well, we've had so many different Gundalow gathering. So we've had from all walks of life. We started with a wonderful sort of documentary of two women from Blue Latitudes who did swimming with the humpback whales.
Oh, wow.
Then we segued to, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jeremy Entremont, but he is sort of the lighthouse person of this seacoast area, and he did a wonderful tour of, I think he did 5 lighthouses, which was excellent. We had an oyster tasting and shucking evening, and a little bit of the history of oysters. We had a wonderful, also kind of like a panel, more of like our science cafe style, beavers in the environment. So that was really, really interesting. I think we called it water over the dam or water over the bridge. It's about, the beavers, and some people love them and some people hate them because they can be fairly destructive.
Right.
But also really important to our environment. We had also the Black Heritage Trail came and talked about sort of a hidden history and untold history of Portsmouth and slave trade and shipbuilding and the way that the waterways were used at that time. And I think you're next. So here you go. So there's a real great, awesome variety of people and topics. And
that's right.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have gone to the oyster one, and certainly the lighthouse one. Once after COVID, if you guys do if you get back to doing live events, I'd very much be interested in doing something live as well. It's a completely different beast. I was teaching a workshop back last year in 2020 when it was interrupted by COVID. And suddenly, I want to say sometime around mid-March, the shelter in place was initiated. And I didn't even know what Zoom was. And then a week later, I was suddenly teaching Zoom classes, It was very clumsy. And, I think the screen went black a few times. But we've been Zooming just about every Tuesday evening for since then. So it's been about 60 Zoom classes. And one thing I learned was that unless I invested in a high-end studio lighting and a high-end audio and video equipment, that it was better to pre-record my demonstrations. And so I've developed as a result of that, I put together a YouTube channel. And so that's what I did today, is I just simply pre-recorded it. And so I know that these are being recorded. That's terrific. Thank you so much. But you can also find this pre-recorded on my YouTube channel. And as a matter of fact, I think at some point I'll be sharing my screen, and I'm simply going to take you over to the YouTube channel where I'll just hit play. And I'll be here to answer questions, that kind of thing too. But it's just made it so much easier, because I can control the demo, but it was trickier to do, again, without the investment of high-end video and audio equipment. I draw my energy from other people, the other creative types. You put me in a room with a bunch of other painters, and I'm really happy. And so I missed that energy the most. We're finally back at it. We're doing live classes with human beings. I'm painting. Now that the outdoor painting season is here, so we go out once a week and paint the seacoast. It's lovely.
So how do you get involved with that, Todd? Do you have a website, or how can people get involved with that?
I do have a website. Yep. We teach year round. And when it's not COVID, we do about 20 workshops a year. I teach about 10 of them, and then the other 10 I outsource and hire other really good painters to come here and teach us painting techniques. And there's such a terrific variety of them. You don't have to go too far. We are very fortunate to be surrounded by world-class artists right here on the seacoast. Stan Moeller, Alistair Dacey, Tom Hughes. I mean, these are nationally recognized painters. Karen Blackwood, the list goes on. There's some very talented, passionate painters who live in our backyard here. And so I work with the ones that I want to study with myself. It's almost like a free way to get a workshop. I just invented an art school. And so it's been great. So we're active all year, and that includes mostly teaching here on the seacoast and southern Maine and York County. And we teach both outdoor and indoor painting classes. And they range everywhere from just 1-day workshops to 8-week workshops where we meet every Tuesday from 9 to noon, that kind of thing. And there are also weekend getaways. We go to Monhegan Island a couple of times a year. We'll be going in July and September. And that's a 4-day workshop where it's complete immersion. So we would just worry about painting the whole time. It's wonderful. And before COVID, we were doing some international workshops. We went to Italy and Ireland, and we're supposed to go to France, but COVID kiboshed that. But it looks like we can travel again as long as you're vaccinated. So that's good news. But yeah, we got a lot of things coming up. There's a White Mountains workshop coming up. So if anybody's interested in painting, you can go to my website, toddbonita.com. And there is a listing for classes there. And yeah, I'd love to, if anybody's interested, you can email me privately, or I'm very available. All my contact information is on my website. And we teach both indoor and outdoor classes. And they're two very different beasts. They really are. There's a different skill set to paint outdoors alla prima, as opposed to indoor studio painting, which is, as I said earlier, it's more like a traditional layering glazing technique that dates back to the pre-Renaissance, really. And one is much more controlled and lends itself, I think if you're just starting out, it's a really good place to go, so you can slowly wrap your head around all of the moving parts to making a painting. Whereas alla prima is you're jumping into the fire. Both of them are perfectly fine, you know, and frankly, you could make a case that by doing alla prima or plein air painting, your growth will be exponential, you know. It depends on the person, you know, it really does. But yeah, I love it. I do. I love, if any of you ever taught anything before, it's neat in that when you have to teach something, you have to learn it in the round so you can explain it and articulate these complex ideas. So just by virtue of teaching, I think it's contributed to my own painting. It's made me a better painter, I think, you know. So I love it. I love the journey. If anybody's interested, yeah, shoot me a note, call me anytime. If you have any questions, I'm happy to chit chat here. But
well, I can attest to that. Our email exchanges have always been vibrant and wonderful, and your energy is connecting, and we just so look forward to this. So,
thank you so much. I do love it. I do love it. So who are our painters here? Who paints in oils? I think you said you did, right, Adele? Yeah. And I'm sorry, you're on mute. Oh, yep. And Marcia, and I think Frank, you're a painter as well.
Yeah, I do watercolors, however.
Oh, do you really?
Yep.
Oh, that's cool. Landscape or seascape or?
I do a lot of seascapes, mostly. Cool. I do boat portraits and seascapes and things. Oh, I just actually signed up for a week at Star Island doing watercolor in September.
Oh, wow. Who will be teaching that one?
Susan Rice, I think her name is.
Yeah.
Susan Rice.
Oh, this Mary Claire. I know her. Doris Rice, maybe?
Doris Rice, yeah.
Yeah, Doris is great. She, when I first moved to town, she was this wonderful mentor. You know, she was so giving with information and letting me know what's what and all the moving parts of the art scene here on the seacoast. She's a treasure.
Oh, good.
Mary Claire, how are you, darling? Mary Claire's actually came and painted in Italy with me a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You've been to some of our workshops. Hell of a painter.
Interestingly enough, our theme of our Gundalow gatherings before COVID was how art has inspired the seacoast, or how the seacoast has inspired artists. And Doris was actually going to be part of our series that we had done. Cool. Priscilla French was also, and the board chair of the New Hampshire Art Association was also going to be partaking. So, you know, that was kind of our plan until we had the pivot. So, but pivot we did. Yeah.
There's rumors of eradication by the fall, but who knows, right? I've read enough things to know that there's half-truths and, and no one can seem to make heads or tails of what's actually happening. But I like that in Massachusetts, there were 80% cases since February. That's good. So in some parts of the world, things seem to be moving in the right direction. But how are you, Mary Claire? Good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you, Todd. I'm well. I'm well. I hear about you from my sisters all the time.
Oh, wonderful.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Karen,
in particular.
Yep, Karen was part of my Tuesday night class.
Yeah.
Yep. So Mary Claire has two sisters who paint, and they have a website called Three Sisters Art, correct?
Yeah, fine art. Three Sisters.
Three Sisters Fine Art, and they take a theme, and then they all sort of paint it and post their interpretation of it, and it's really cool. And I've been fortunate enough to have all three of them at a workshop once, and well, as I said earlier, there's something about the energy of your fellow artists, and when you have family members together, it's kind of cool. It's a good thing. You've been painting a lot?
I have been, but Todd, I think the energy may come from you.
I told you it's contagious.
It is. It is.
Mary Claire, how different are the three of you? So let's say you all had to paint an apple. How would the apple be represented by all three of you?
Well, I think you would know that it was an apple, but
Yes.
it would be different. I mean, we have three very different personalities. One of my sisters has been painting much longer than the other two, and she does more really fine art work where she's very detailed. She's very accurate. And Karen, the youngest sister, she's more whimsical. She was a children's book illustrator, so she's got a sense of sort of a joyful approach that's light and bright. And I'm real fast because I discovered art late in life and I'm running out of time. So I paint like with reckless abandon. So whatever happens, happens. But we're really very different, but you would know that they were apples.
Right.
Right, Todd?
Yes, you definitely would. In landscape and seascape. You did some real humdingers on Monhegan, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have people in this group taken workshops with you, Todd? Have other people? Oh man. Oh wow. If you have a chance, I 100% recommend it. It is a gift to you to take a class, a workshop, or a painting trip with Todd. It is the best.
That's really nice of you to say, Mary Claire. I'm going to put you on the payroll. You're going to be part of my marketing team. No, thank you. That's sweet. It's sweet. Gosh.
It's a couple of minutes after 7, so we should probably go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rich Clybourne, and I'm the Executive Director of the Gundalow Company. I want to welcome you to the 7th and final virtual Gundalow gathering of 2021. It's wonderful to see all of you, even if it's virtually. And we're excited to have you join us for what is a first for us, a virtual painting workshop. In a few minutes, I'll introduce our instructor, Todd Bonita. But before I do that, I have a few announcements to make and some housekeeping items to go over with you. So first, we have been working very hard over the last 4 to 6 weeks getting our replica Gundalow, the Piscataqua, ready for the 2021 sailing season. This week, we reached a critical milestone by passing our annual Coast Guard inspection, and we actually made our inaugural voyage yesterday. We took a group of the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce folks from our dock in Prescott Park over to the River House restaurant. And that is essentially the start of the Chamber's event called Hit the Decks. And that's the official kickoff of the summer season for the city of Portsmouth and all the activities that are going on there. Our public sales are going to start on Memorial Day weekend. You can check out our schedule and purchase tickets on our website at gundalow.org. Because we're still operating with a reduced capacity due to COVID-19, we're encouraging everyone to purchase tickets ahead of time. In fact, I was out on the website this afternoon and noticed that we have sales that are already starting to fill up. We'll also be holding our traditional speaker sales and on Tuesday evenings, and our concert sales on Thursdays and Sundays. Again, you can find the list of speakers and music groups that are scheduled to perform on our website. We also offer private charters for events such as birthdays, anniversaries, corporate gatherings, bachelorette parties, engagements, and even weddings. If you're interested in chartering the Piscataqua, please give us a call at the office. If we're out sailing, just leave a voicemail and Andy, our operations manager, will give you a call back. I also wanted to draw attention to our River Rat Summer Camp program. We offer a full pallet. See what I did there with the art reference? A full pallet of camps for children from ages 5 to 16. The website has all the camps listed, but I'll tell you that we are almost at capacity, so you'll have to act fast if you want to get a slot. You can register and pay for the camps on the website as well. And now for a couple of housekeeping items for tonight's workshop. Typically, I mute everybody so that there's no distractions for the speaker. But this evening, because of the interactivity of the workshop, I'm not going to mute everyone, but I am going to ask you to mute yourselves unless you have a question to ask Todd. Again, that just sort of cuts down on the distractions and the background noise. If you're not comfortable asking a question directly to Todd, you can always type it into the chat room, and I'll monitor the chat room and make sure that Todd sees that question. We are recording the event, and it'll be available to watch in a few days on our YouTube channel, and you should receive an email with a link to that YouTube video when it's available. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our instructor for the evening, Todd Bonita. Todd is a very talented local artist whose work is represented by 10 art galleries in New England, Florida, and the UK, and is in hundreds of corporate and private collections worldwide, including that of President George H.W. Bush. Painting is his full-time occupation. He owns and operates the Todd Bonita Art Gallery in Ogunquit, Maine, and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and is co-owner of the Ogunquit Summer School of Art, where he teaches painting classes and art workshops year-round. Todd, welcome, and thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, my good man. Thank you so much. That's cool. Thank you so much for thinking of me. It's really an honor. I love this town, and I love what you guys are doing, and it's cool to be part of it. And it's a very culturally rich area here. And well, let's get cracking. I think I can share my screen. I believe you've enabled me to do that, correct? Okay.
Yeah, so you're a co-host, so go right ahead and share your screen.
Oh, I love technology when it works. Okay, let's see. All right, let me stop share and share my desktop, which I'll take you over to my YouTube channel and where I pre-recorded this. Okay, good. Can you guys see my screen okay? What do you guys see on my screen? You good? Okay, excellent. So let me minimize one or two things. I will, all right, here we go. This grid will better enable us to do an accurate drawing. Let's start in the beginning, shall we? Hi, everyone. Today, we are going to paint a Gundalow. I'm happy to be working with the Portsmouth Gundalow Company and to paint a very simple painting of a Gundalow with a photograph provided by the Portsmouth Gundalow Company. Glad you could be here. So let's just jump right in. Since we have a short amount of time, I'm going to use a painting technique called alla prima, which translates into one shot. So I think we've got about an hour to do what will be an 8x10-inch oil painting, a monochromatic oil painting. Mono meaning one, and chroma, color, one color. In this case, we'll be using raw umber and white. That's really about it. Sometimes I will accent with ultramarine blue or black just to get those darkest darks. But in this case, let's just see how much we can get done using the raw umber. And so I'm using titanium white and raw umber oil paints. And I'm also using liquid, which is a quick dry medium. And I squeeze my liquid in my, you can squeeze it on your palette, or in this case, I'm just using a little palette cup. So first things first, I'm gonna use the largest brush I can. In this case, I'm using a number 6 flat. And you know, I know different paintbrush manufacturers will assign different numbers to different sizes, but as long as it's about the width of my pinky, so that should do it. So I get some liquid and I just rub it on the surface. I'm gonna sort of prime the surface with just a little bit of color. No special brush work here. I just want to stain the canvas to get rid of all the white. Get a little more liquid. So this is a super thin layer. Using not a lot of paint. And this should just take 30 seconds to a minute. While I do this, let's talk about our composition. In the art world, one of the things we try to do when we look at nature or we look at an image that we intend to paint is we try to simplify it. Or as we say, keep it simple, sweetheart, K-I-S-S, right? And so the photograph we'll be working from tonight has been provided by the Portsmouth Gundalow Company. And I believe it's a Gundalow sailing out here on the Piscataqua River, right here in lovely Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We're very fortunate in these parts. Appreciate the Gundalow Company and all they do, keeping our past heritage alive. That's pretty awesome. So glad you could all be with us tonight to participate in this and the Gundalow Company doing what they're doing and keep Portsmouth awesome. Okay, good. So one of the objectives here is just to simply cover the white of the canvas. We're going to do a technique called alla prima, which just simply translates into one shot. So we're going to try to complete the painting in one shot, one session. We have a limited amount of time tonight, so I thought this would be probably the best approach. Right above my canvas here, you can see I have a value scale. The value scale is simply black, white, and various shades of gray in between. You can see also they're numbered 1 through 9, with 1 being the darkest dark and 9 being the lightest light, or white from the two. I choose a value scale that has 9 values because it's an odd number. And an odd number gives me a definitive middle value, value 5. So when we look at our value scale, or when we look at nature, or in this case, the picture of the Gundalow, what we want to do is we want to squint our eyes and look at this photograph and forget that we are looking at a Gundalow, distant headlands, sky, and water. Because really, in the interest of keeping it simple, sweetheart, this is really, we're going to try to narrow it down to its simplest components so that we can better be able to portray it on the canvas. And so in the interest of keeping it simple, I squint my eyes and see this as 4 abstract puzzle shapes of light, dark, and midtone, rather than seeing water, sky, distant headland, and Gundalow. So stay with me and I'll explain exactly what I mean. So if you squint your eyes and you just look at the shape that defines the sky, for example, if you squint your eyes and then look at my value scale up here, and if you squint down and try to match the value, I'd approximate that sky to be at a value 7. Conversely, if you look at the distant headland, those trees in the background that are right behind the Gundalow, I have those at approximately a value 3. They're not quite the darkest dark. That distinction belongs to the Gundalow itself, which is probably a value 2. And then the water, somewhere between a value 4 and 5. It's probably a 4.5, something like that. And so your ability to look at nature, or in this case, look at the photograph of the Gundalow, the sky, the distant headlands, and the water, and translate those into a numerical value is at the heart of what it is to translate light, because that's what we're doing after all. As artists, we're really replicating light. And we use our value system to do that. That's our metaphor for light. So, okay, so this really becomes quite simple. So our strategy is this, well, we take a breath, and then we look at nature, or in this case, the picture of the Gundalow, and we just take a minute just to look and see what's before us and process it and sort of strategize. It's, I equate it to the Olympic skier before they go down the hill. They sort of close their eyes and visualize what it will be like to go down the ski hill. Well, if you can look at your motif for nature and visualize what it will look like as a finished painting, then you will be 2 steps ahead of the sheriff or better prepared to have a more successful painting. So what do we have before us? Well, we have, let's see, if we squint our eyes, we have 4 simple shapes: sky, distant headland, water, and the Gundalow itself. The Gundalow, if you take a look at it carefully and look at it abstractly, it really makes a triangle. And a triangle is a very solid form in the art world. While I do this, let's make a grid on our canvas. You'll notice that in the photograph that I've provided today, you can see a grid. This grid looks like a tic-tac-toe, and it divides the canvas into thirds. So let's do the same thing. And I'm using a small round brush here. And I'm going to get a little liquid on my brush and just a little bit of oil. I'm going to divide the canvas in thirds with a thin line. And you can see it's not perfect, but I'm not looking for perfection today. And I'll do the same thing vertically. Essentially making a tic-tac-toe grid. This grid will better enable us to do an accurate drawing. Okay, so now we have a very simple composition, our triangle. A triangle is a solid design form, and it was used actually to block out the parameters of the Mona Lisa. The triangle is an old world traditional design armature, and so we have one here that's working quite nicely. So this is really 1, 2, 3, just 4 simple shapes. And so let's take them shape by shape. Typically, the first mark I will make once I look at my photo reference on nature and process it is my horizon line. Now, if you look at your grid, we can see clearly that somewhere in the middle here is your horizon line, where the water meets that distant headland. I have it maybe, you know, if we're talking about thirds, it's in the middle third, and just slightly north of halfway up, I see my horizon line there. So my first mark will be my horizon line. Just paint that right in. Doesn't have to be perfect. If you're using a, you can use a ruler or a straight edge or something to get that accurate, but in nature, you very rarely see straight lines. Those are typically subordinated to architecture or man-made things like the mast of the Gundalow here. But in our case, we have an organic waterfront where the headlands meet the water. So we will just kind of paint it in loosely, right? So we start loose and get detailed later. Okay. You can see that the top of those distant headlands comes below this line here, right? So it's approximately somewhere in here. And it's not straight either. And so I'm just gonna sort of make organic-like shapes that look kind of like the tops of trees and just draw it all the way across. That's gonna represent our distant headlands. So just by making these 2 lines that represent the distant headland, we've already defined where the water is, the distant headland, and the sky. And all we've really done was make 2 lines, that's it. And so now the next bit is to get the Gundalow in, right? And so when I look at the Gundalow, I see 2 distinct shapes that pop out to me. And if I squint my eyes a little bit, the ones that I see first, I call the high reader, or the thing that is most obvious to you. And the one I see first is the Gundalow itself, the body of the Gundalow. And it looks like it's right here below this line here, right? It's like just a big horizontal shape. Of course, it hooks at either end. And then you have the diagonal of the Gundalow itself, the mast rather. Okay. So, watch how easy this is to find. We see that the Gundalow is right here, right below this line, and we want to see where it ends, where the bow and the stern is. So the stern of the Gundalow is right about here, right? With our grid system, we can see that it touches this line right about here. And that's something like that. And it comes all the way to here. Not quite halfway, right? A third of the way there. Yeah, believe it or not, we're almost done. So this is pretty much how I start all my alla prima paintings. We start with a two-dimensional linear drawing. And our strategy is to simply pre-mix our color, or in this case, our values. We'll get to that in a minute. And just more or less fill it in. Kind of like the old coloring books we had when we were kids. Okay. So now that you measure twice, look 3 times, measure twice, and then if you're satisfied with where the bow and the stern are placed, maybe this bow comes out a little bit further. Okay. Then it's easy. I'm just going to attach this part to that part. So it looks like it's pretty much straight across, but with some wavelets interrupting it, so it's not perfect. Not a huge fan of perfection, right? We can straighten our lines later if we have to, but keep it loose. I think it's a good idea to keep it loose. Keep it loose as long as you can. We can tighten later. Now, the Gundalow itself doesn't exactly go all the way across. It's sort of concave, right? And it looks like concave part starts here. It gets about as low as it gets right about here, and then joins the bow right about there. And so I will do my best to sort of, I'll look 3 times, 3, then just kind of connect those shapes. Easy peasy, right? Good. All right. A good composition is a composition that has 5 or fewer major shapes. So just to be clear, if you look at your photo reference, you can see that there are, maybe 4 major shapes here. The sky, the distant headland, the water, and the sail of the Gundalow itself. These marks that I just made that, indicate the bottom of the Gundalow itself, this is a minor shape. Major shapes are shapes that you see standing across the room with squinted eyes, like 5 or 6 feet away. I'm just taking the paint and I'm gonna fill the Gundalow in. This is my darkest dark. And it happens to already be on the brush, okay? Very good. With my finger, just going to soften that edge. Voila. And it looks like, I asked myself, where else in the painting am I seeing this color or value? And I see there's, forgive me if I get this wrong, but it looks like a little rudder back here. Is that right? From the Gundalow company will have to correct me. But it looks like a little rudder. Oh, might as well get that in. Okay. So if those 4 major shapes define the large masses, those little people on there, those are the minor shapes. We're not going to concern ourselves with the minor shapes yet. And you can see there's some kind of a buoy on the left-hand side back there. That's not lost on me. There's teeny little shapes in the distant headland. That stuff comes later. When we're creating a painting, we start with the big stuff. And we progress to the medium-sized shapes and then the smaller shapes. Or as we say, we start with a broom and finish with a needle. Or start with the dog and finish with the flea. I can see that the curve of the bow of the boat is a little bit off. And, we're not perfectionists, but if you can fix something that you catch early, just do your best to get it and fix as you go along. Paintings, it's been said that paintings are just one giant mistake that we spend the entire duration of it just fixing. Okay, so to do the mask, this is actually more simple than you might think. You just find the top and the bottom and you join them. So let's find the top of the mask first. We know it's in this middle square, and we know it's almost in the center, but slightly to the right, Maybe 1/3 of the way down, right? And slightly to the right of the middle. Does that look about right? Yes. And you could check it by doing what's called a diagrammatic line. So if I was to make an imaginary line that touched the top of the mast And that imaginary line went all the way through the Gundalow. You can see that it splits the Gundalow almost in half, right? It's called a diagrammatic line. That's how we check the accuracy. Okay, now we want to find the placement of the mast and where it meets the Gundalow. And you can see that it is above this line here, right? So it's probably somewhere right here. Boom. This is like target practice more than anything, isn't it? And then from there, you could take a ruler, a straight edge. In this case, I'll just use a paintbrush and I just kind of join these lines. And this is something you can put in afterwards. And no, it's not cheating. Okay. And it looks like there is another one here that is to the left of this line here. And it goes about halfway up and meets the Gundalow right about there. It's the Gundalow mast rather. We could beef those up later on about that. That's really about it. We'll come back and put the people in later. Okay, so for the mast of the Gundalow, mast clearly starts here. So again, we're looking for the big shapes. And the bottom of the mast, remember, it's just like target practice. Where does it end? It's clearly in the middle square. And if I find the center, I can see that it is below the center, maybe, right? Yeah, maybe below the center, slightly to the left of center, somewhere around there. Does that look about right? Does to me, by golly. Okay, and we said the top comes there. And this one is catching a little wind. It's not quite a straight line. And has a slight little curvature to it. Voila. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're less interested in replicating nature. In other words, we're not trying to make a photographic representation of what we see. It's our poetic interpretation. We are poets, not reporters, but less interested in reporting what we see and more interested in our poetic interpretation. Okay, so the mast meets the Gundalow right about here. Constructs that. It gets a little concave right there. Or is that convex? I get them confused. The smiley face one. All right, very good. All right, so at this point, you want to back up to a vantage point where you can see the whole, right? Big comparisons, was kind of checking our drawing, looking at things like the background landmass. You know, does the Gundalow mast overlap right about there and right there? Yeah, it looks pretty good. I can make a little correction here. Maybe Gundalow mast comes in a little bit lower. Okay, you got me there. A little wonky in my drawing there. You know, I'm okay with that. Okay. All right. Our two-dimensional drawing is done. Now let's get on to returning our focus onto the values, right? We said the sky was a value 7. You squint your eyes and you look at your value scale. Yeah, it looks to be about a value 7. And then the landmass, the distant headland there, is approximately a value 3. This is a value 2, the Gundalow itself and the mast. And the water we have somewhere at about a 4.5. And then the mast itself, it looks like this sun and shadow on the Gundalow mast. And if I squint my eyes, the shadow side is almost the same value as the water, and the light side is almost the same value as the sky, but maybe half a value lighter. And so I spent some time making these distinctions because the accuracy of your painting relies heavily on your ability to match these values, right? So when I look up here, I'm just trying to match the sky to this value here. So let's do that, shall we? One thing I'll do just to make my job a little bit easier. At this point, you can begin to wipe away your grid lines if you want. You know, we're going to cover these with paint, so they won't be too cumbersome. But for those of you who like to have a little control, go right ahead, put the rag around your finger, and just wipe away your grid lines. Be careful not to wipe away the parts that are the drawing. And that way we can have some clarity here. And already we're beginning to be convinced that we won't be able to actually pull this off. That'd be fun. Okay, good. All right. Let's keep this simple. There are many different ways to strategize here. You could start with the largest mass first, which would be the water, and mixing up a value 4.5. You could start with the darkest dark, which we already have really, but you could start from dark to light, which would mean you would start with the distant headlands. Or some artists will start with the sky, so you can cue the rest of it based off the sky. There's many different ways to paint, and I'm not going, my ego isn't big enough that I pretend that I know the right way, but I'm feeling that, that it might be good to get it work from back to front since there are so many overlapping shapes, right? Like the mast overlaps the water, the distant headlands, and the sky. So maybe we'll start from the back of the painting, work our way from front. Good. So this is simpler than you might think. So I'm going to take a brush and load it up with some clean liquid. If my liquid gets too contaminated, I will clean the brush off and squeeze out new liquid. But that is clean liquid. I don't use that much. You know, you can see I'll put some on the canvas here. It's just a little, just enough to wet the paint. Liquid is a quick dry medium. It speeds up the drying time of the paint. Okay, so squinting my eyes and looking at the relative value, at value number 7. And here's a little trick if you're trying to match values. Anything above a value for 5, mid-tone value, so value 6, 7, 8, or 9, start with white. And put white into that liquid that I just laid on. Start with white and then mix color into it rather than the opposite. Wait, say that again? I know you were thinking it, so I will say it. If you are going to mix a value, in this case, the sky, which happens to be a value 7-ish, anything above a 5, which includes 6, 7, 8, or 9, start with white and then we'll color into it. Keep saying color. It's not lost on me. We are painting monochromes here. So what I'm doing now is if you look at this big blob of color, which I will call my mother color, and then you squint your eyes and compare it to value 7, what you're trying to do is simply match the value. So this part is not even artistic. This part is actually more scientific. We're just really matching a number, right? We're using chemistry, if you will. Like it's closer to chemistry in math, I suppose. But okay, and one way to do this is this. You can use a piece of paper or tape or anything. And put the value on there and then hold it right up to your value scale. And you can see, for example, it's lighter than a 4, lighter than a 5, right? Yes, squint your eyes. 6, this one might be closer to a 6. I may have to lighten that. And so really it's about developing sensitivities to your eyesight, right? This could go a pinch lighter. It's very simple when you're just dealing with raw umber and white. Just a pinch. What a difference half a value makes. Probably should use the index card rather than 2. All right, so once you're satisfied with your value or your color, move that sucker in. I can see there's clouds there, but again, the clouds are really minor shapes, because when I say clouds, all you're really seeing with the clouds is the sun kissing the tops of those clouds. So it gets a little bit lighter. So if you squint your eyes and forget it's a cloud, you just see it as a piece of paint, you'll see that those pieces of paint that kiss the top of the clouds are just minor shapes. They're hard to see with squinted eyes standing 5 or 6 feet away. You don't mix up enough paint, just stay with your mother color and keep pulling color on the side so you can compare it. See that? Brown, we're just trying to match the value. Obviously, use a little more white. And after you do this for a while, you develop sensitivities to distinguish subtleties within the value range. You know, you can mix values 7, 7.5, 7.3, and get subtle variety within your value families. Fun already. There's something relaxing about whipping a brush. I don't know what it is. I swear it reverses aging. Relaxing. This, as you may already know, painting is a right brain activity. And right brain is the artist's hemisphere of the brain. And there are healing properties in if you can tap into the right hemisphere of the brain. So if you listen to music, classical music, particularly where there's no words, puzzles are abstract. Those are right brain activities, and so is painting and drawing. Our therapists have tapped into the bountiful healing property world of art and painting and craft. So there is something relaxing about this. Something in the art world called the alien abduction, where you're painting and you look at the clock and 3 hours went by and you're like, where did the time go? I can't believe it's 9:30. Excellent. Voila, there is your sky. We just want to cover the surface, that's it. Nothing fancy, no fancy brush work. I'd say the paint quality, it's probably like as thick as a dime, maybe. I don't know, yeah, about as thick as a dime, how about that? All right. So I'm squinting my eyes and I'm comparing. Seeing if that, yeah, that looks like about a value 17, right about there. Squint your eyes, that's what you're looking for. If you're half a value off, don't be too hard on yourself, right? Let's do the best we can. All right. Using a clean brush, I'm gonna move right down to the value 3 that defines the distant headlands. So now if it's a value of 4 or less, or value 5 or less, you can start with the actual color itself, right? Or in this case, brown. Well, same thing. As you can see, I'm mixing this on the canvas. You can telegraph it also, so I can see what it will look like on my painting by looking at it on the canvas first. Now, I will tell you some insider's knowledge. I happen to know that raw umber, when you squeeze it from the tube, is already a value 2 or 1.5. So we have to lighten it to make it a 3. And I can just a pinch of white to do that. So here again, something tells me it's going to be probably going to be, check our little swatch. It's about a value 4. I could go a little bit darker there. And again, because we are painting with just monochromes, brown and white, it's very simple, right? Decisions become simple. Once you get familiar and used to painting in brown and white or monochrome, then it's a good idea to take a deeper dive into color. Color can be very intimidating. So this is darkening it a little bit. It's a little bit of a leap there, but it's enough, I think. I think that puts us at about a 3. Yes, it does. Voila. So I have a new mother color right here, and I will use this to define the distant headland. I'm going to be careful that my brush stroke doesn't hit the sky. Okay. I'm going to leave a little room. I'll come back later with a more sensitive brush stroke and weave them into one another carefully, right? You don't want to make, I don't want to contaminate it. So I'll leave that for a later stroke. Deliberately not painting up the sky. Get close. If you can, avoid painting right up to that sky. See why in a second. Good. All right. Now I'm going to load my brush up again, make sure I have enough paint on there. Again, I'm thinking about as thick as a dime. Does that make sense? As thick as a dime. Okay, you can see the consistency. Not too thin, not too thick. I'm pretty much in control. And this stroke will just be a little careful. It will kiss the sky, the brush, but I will keep it moving. I won't noodle. And it's almost like I'm just gonna lay it down and leave it. I'm making organic shapes like the tops of the trees, right? I'm putting variety in them. It's not a monotonous camelback, camelback, camelback. I'll load the brush up again. So in other words, when I say camelback, camelback, I got 2 camelback humps there, and maybe it goes straight for a little while, right? I just wanted some variety in there, and I'm just kissing the tops of those trees. The tree line, rather, is kissing the sky. Okay, good. Voila, moving right along now. All right, let's keep rolling. Let's move it right down to the water, which we said is approximately a value of 4, 5. And I've got a big old mess here. I'm gonna squeeze out a little more liquid. I've got a big old mess of color. Rather than clean my palette, since we're just dealing with brown and white, I'm gonna get some liquid. I'm just gonna make a big mess of what I got here. Because I've got something light, something dark. It's really a matter of just grabbing paint, mashing it together and mashing that value. I'm looking for something in here. Approximately in there. 4 or 5 rather. And same thing, you can grab a swatch. Put the swatch in there. Try to match it to somewhere between the 4 and 5. What do you think? Squint your eyes. That looks like a 5 to me. And so, let's see, we're not interested in modeling yet. Modeling means, you know, making shapes that sort of define the textural surface of water, for example. All right, I think that could be a little bit lighter. I'm just gonna grab a little white, pull it down in there, a little more liquid. We're just matching values, right? Easy peasy, pumpkin squeezy, baby. That's right. All right, again, we are not going to touch the distant headlands with the water. I call this tree mass back there, the distant headlands. And you can see the distinction. So let your eye look at your photo reference, right? Sky, distant headland, water. Just make sure you got those masses in there. Okay? And again, you're going to leave a thin line where the water does not touch the right here, you might get a little noodle getting super close into your, you can use a smaller brush if you find it difficult to do with the big brush. I try to use the biggest brush I can for as long as I can. One thing you'll notice is I'm keeping the strokes horizontal. One of my art instructors in art school told me a long time ago that when you're painting nature, you can have your strokes follow the topography of the land or the thing you're painting, the object or form. It'll be more believable. Right? So I'm not going to paint water up, down. I'm going to paint it sort of left to right, but it's an organic stroke too, right? So it's not a perfectly ruled line. It's organic, but the paint does that, doesn't it? Every time you lay down a brush stroke, it's like this organic stroke. So these are the large masses. We start with the broom, we finish with the needle. And so as you're painting this, just know that you will come back and make smaller accents later. So don't feel like you're painting over an area where you might put a wavelet or something, or that glue. We'll put all that stuff in later, remember, right? Great thing about a simple composition is you can already see it. You can see the finish line already. Take a look, even with these little simple masses, we already have something that's already somewhat defined. Now you can see the end. You can sort of glimpse what it's going to look like. You do it through a little careful brush work, staying in the lines. Remember when you were like 5 and 6 years old? You were so much cooler if you could stay in the lines. Yep. We determined with the cool kids. You could stay in the lines. All right. I might go half a value darker as the water gets closer to you. Like that. Just to put variety in there. And there's no fancy brush strokes here, is there? A little different, a little pink. Spin my eyes. I'm putting variety so it's not a big old flat mass. So this next stroke I may, let's see, I'll go a little more brown on there. So I'm changing the variety. As you get closer to the viewer, the degree of detail builds up a little bit, right? So we started our water with a value 4.5-ish, something like that, right? We're not working in exacts. Exacts can be boring. We are looking for expression. So leaving little little holidays there so you can see through, right? You can see the background here. Okay. That is putting some variety and detail. You can see these little wavelets anyway. And so now my stroke is it's doing this. It's a little wavelet-y. I'm using the thicker part of the brush as I get closer to it. I'm going to get darker as I get closer. Just a little bit, fraction, right? So if that's a value 5, by making it a little darker, I'm pulling it towards the 4. So it's a 4.5, something like that. You know, it's barely noticeable. If I can put some there, right? Just kind of leave it in there. I'll build it up as you get closer here. Start with a broom, finish with a needle. That's a metaphor for the big thoughts, the bigger brushes. So far, I've only used this large brush here. I've not used anything yet but very, well, I guess I did use the small round start like Warren, and I'll return to that with details later on. I actually like what's happening there. That's cool. A little wave that's, it becomes expressive, right? It's not perfection. I'm not looking for tight representational rules. You know, I could do a studio painting and get something tighter for sure, and I enjoy doing that too. But there's something about alacrima. Absolutely, it is refreshing in some ways, right? It's very expressive. I can see that the Gundalow is making a little wavelet behind it, and so the water surface is changing. So I've loaded the brush up with something a little bit darker than the value 4.5, right? It's got more brown in it. And I'm gonna hold it by hold the end of the brush like this. And with a very light hand, almost like you almost drop the paintbrush. I'm just gonna drag it to the end of the boat. And you can telegraph it first, you know, without making the stroke. That's it. And it's okay to fail. It's almost a good thing to sort of just be willing to fail. Now I can see that the Gundalow is, it's creating a very subtle shadow. I should say the Gundalow mast is creating a subtle shadow in the water. It's very, very subtle. And so, and it's sort of in this area here. Take a look at it first and sort of, again, telegraphing it. So I'm gonna make some darker marks just in this area here, right? So the sun is not hitting the water, so it's creating a little shadow here, but it's very, very subtle. I'm gonna load the brush up again the same way I did there. This is subtle. And so in this area here, coming down, I'm just gonna kind of weave the brush in this manner. Like a little upward stroke, little smiley face strokes kind of. That sounded dangerously close like Bob Ross, or something he would say. Little smiley strokes. Okay, good. You want soft edges on these, right? Soft edges. Hard edges are subordinated to things that are man-made mostly, right? Or things you want the viewer's eye stop at. Hard edges stop the eye and come forward. Soft edges recede. And riplets in the water are certainly mostly soft edges. You can now load the brush up with dark ink here. And you squint your eyes, you can notice that in the foreground, in front of the boat, the water in front of the boat does have a few sort of little dark notes. And they are just almost going in like a spear fishing, boom, boom, and just making teeny little marks here and there, boom, boom, right? Just a few of them. And I'm gonna subordinate these to the foreground only. If they go in the background, you're not gonna feel the depth. By subordinating these little marks to the foreground, we follow the academic rule in painting that says texture comes forward and the absence of texture recedes. In other words, put the detailed stuff in the foreground, the middle foreground. I'm just dragging the brush lightly over them to soften the edges, okay? Water to me, somewhat. Chop in the water. Make evidence of some of the factors, evidence. All right. I'm getting dangerously close to finishing up here. Okay, good. Now the value of the water we said is a 4.5-ish. This mast is very close to that value. I've enhanced it in Photoshop just to make sure. So I'm still dealing with this mother color, this pool that's approximately that value. And so I'm gonna put some of that in here. Just kind of look at it. Okay. Yep, I'm satisfied with that. This will convince us of the illusion that this mast is catching the wind. You can see it only takes up about half of that sail, right? Just about half. Mine gets a little clumsy at the top, so there's no reason why you can't take a rag in your finger and then just kind of mess with that, get it this way. I'm using blue shop towels. I get these at the hardware store, and they're fairly inexpensive. You buy them by the roll, get a 6-pack of them. You're working with the same mother color, the left side that is catching more light. I'm just going to pull more light into my value 4. This brings it up, I'm sorry, value 5. This brings it closer to a value 6, doesn't it? Yeah, this is probably a value 6. So it's maybe almost the same value as the sky, but maybe half a value darker. You'll know it when you see it. Value is relative. So it optically looks darker or lighter based upon the values that are next to it. Okay. So let's mask that color in. And then we'll soften the edge where it meets the dark side of the canvas. Okay. All right, so the difference is, look at your photo reference, where these two meet, it's a softer edge. The way we painted them in is a hard edge. It's important to note that every time you make a brush stroke, it's essentially a hard edge, right? So you have to actively make it soft. I'm going to clean most of the paint off of the brush. So it's somewhat of a clean brush. It's slightly contaminated, but that's fine. And with a very light touch, you just go in and almost just kiss it and just kind of drag one into the other. Just kind of play with the edge. You can even squivel a little bit. It's fun. See what happens when you soften that? It actually feels like canvas as opposed to, you know, hard surfaces that come together and have a much sharper, definitive hard line. Okay, very good. One thing I'll do is I'm going to actually get a little more white, pull it into that, and give it a little kiss right here. Clean off the brush again and soften those edges again, right? Feel the direction that light. Pretty good. All right. Okay. One thing we forgot to do is pull that water line on the distant headlands. So let's do that now. It's the repair shop time. So now we've started with the broom, now we have to finish with the needle. That means fixing little accents, right? So we've learned the skill set to match values, and so this will be a good little lesson here. Let's say you forgot an area, and I've got to go back and remix that color or something, right? It's very simple. I've remixed the water color value, which is, I think we said was a 4.5. I'll just go lay some in, and if it's too dark or too light, I'll know right away. That looks pretty good. I noticed that on the distant, on the shoreline, that it actually gets a little bit lighter. So this is where, when you get to the end of the painting, you can almost put the photo reference away and just say to yourself, you know, I think it's time to make art and be a little more expressive anyway, right? The little things like this is called counter change, where you make little areas pop by changing the contrast, heightening the contrast. So, oops. So by lightening, it'll actually bring more attention and more drama to this particular area. Not that we want all the drama back there in the background. Soft edges, okay? So if that's a hard edge, I will clean off the brush again, and I'll lightly drag it over the top where these two values meet. Soft edges recede. So this is background information. This is behind the Gundalow. The Gundalow is our focal point. It's our lead singer. So all the hard edges should be subordinated to the Gundalow. So we'll soften edges behind there. Okay, good. Same goes for where the trees meet the sky. Let's have some fun here. I'm going to mix up the same value as the trees, which we said was a value 3, okay? We're just doing little accents here. I take that value 3 and lighten it a little bit, bring it closer to a value 4. We want a slightly lighter version than the trees, okay? A little more white, a little more light in there. What we're gonna do is we're gonna kiss the tops of some of those trees with light. We're gonna do it where the trees meet the sky. See that? Now it's a hard line now. And remember, when you make these lines, I'm going to go back and soften these in the same way I soften the mass, and the same way I soften the edge where the water meets the distant headlands. I'm looking at my reference. And notice no fancy brush work here. I'm using the side of the brush, and I'm trying to see what nature looks like, looking at my reference. This will give some dimension to the background without it being too interrupted, without it coming too close to the viewer, right? So the more detail you put in the background, the closer it comes to the viewer optically. You want it to sit right in its space. It should sit in the background behind the Gundalow. So when you make a few marks, it's not a bad idea to step back and kind of observe the marks you made compared to the whole. Shoreline here. Little tree there, right? So we're just making accents, just accents. I want to keep the strokes, I want to avoid same, so I'm not making everything the same sort of cone-like shape. I want variety in there. Okay. Just again, go back and make sure your edges are soft. Hard edges come forward, soft edges recede. So there is a subtle balance in all of this, right? Done carefully, you can create the illusion of distance. Just enough. We want to give it just enough to read as background. A little shoreline back there. Soft edges. Soft edges recede, hard edges come forward. All right. It's amazing what a little accent can do. You know, make something come forward. Okay, very good. Let's grab some white. We'll accent the tops of clouds. All right. So let's grab some white. We'll pull it into the brown. It's not going to be pure white, but probably like a value 8 maybe. It's really the lightest light. But it doesn't have to pop. This doesn't have to be our main plate. We're a poet's not reporters, so we're not worried about replicating nature exactly. It just has to be lighter than the sky. And I'm going to load the brush up. I'm going to pull it to the side and sort of make the organic shapes of clouds. I'm not going to overdo it. My goal is to lay it down and leave it once if I can, and then come back and soften the edge. I'm going to pull it behind the Gundalow. Again, telegraphing. So I'm going to sort of like carve out the organic shapes of those clouds. And I want it to, the Gundalow mass to overlap it. All right, so here we go. Very light touch. As I bear down, it releases some of the pigment. As I lighten my touch, it sort of releases. It's almost like a calligraphy artist. You bear down, you leave more, that kind of thing. So that's all we're doing right there. Load up the brush again. I'm gonna, with a soft brush, I'm gonna pull it so it optically looks like it's overlapping. The mass itself is overlapping. Overlap is one of the techniques we use to enhance the illusion of 3 dimensions. So the fact that the mass overlaps this tells our brains that something's in front of something. If something's in front of something, there must be 2 dimensions in it. Don't forget, we're just painting on a 2-dimensional surface here. Now with a clean brush again, you go back and you can soften them. Don't overdo it. You don't want to noodle. You just want them to soft because, you know, these are clouds after all. And then once things happen when you blend them. I'll just blend the left side so you can see and compare it to the right. And see how they just sit back there? Thicker paint comes forward, softer, thinner paint seeds. Right? So you just want to sit in the background. We can make that pop. We'll grab some more white. It looks like it's getting kissed right there. Just have a little tension come out. That's fine. Top of these white paint. I'm gonna overdo it. All right, let's do some accenting. I'm going to get a smaller brush now. You can use your small round, the one I used in the beginning, or you can use, in this case, I just have a small brush. Now it's time to accent the little things that's kind of pull it together, right? So here we go. I will get something dark. Clean up my mask. This is where I have a little more careful hand. My time, I'll breathe. And you can even use a maul stick or something to steady your hand. Let's see. I'll use another brush. And just carefully redefine that mask. Voila. Could have done that with the round brush too. That would have been perfectly fine. But get me drop down. Same thing. You could telegraph it first if you want. Accents sort of pull it all together. Just going to clean up this line here for the gray. And I think of this as still drawing. I'm redefining the shape of the Gundalow itself there. And clean it up here. Get that shape back. Refinement, right? Seems to me if you get the shape of the Gundalow, It would just be simply more convincing. You can tell lies elsewhere, but that shape is so distinct, isn't it? A little sharp hook right there. Beautiful design. Nothing like seeing that cruise down the Piscataqua on a summer afternoon. I haven't taken a ride. I mean, it's definitely worth it. With my kids a number of years ago. Field trip, that was fun. Okay. All right, very good. Let's put in some of these little details and let this sucker pop. So I'm going to grab the darkest paint I can, which is the raw umber, and reinforce the Gundalow itself. This is my darkest stone. This is my most careful brushwork. Should be in the detail, right? Everything else is somewhat loose. Okay. We're going to take back our rudder. Now, see the hard edge of the Gundalow where it meets the water? That's something, it's almost the darkest dark there. And I'm just going to, it's like a shadowy area. And it's really about softening that line here. So with a soft touch, I'm just gonna make little touches. Little touches. Okay. And I'm gonna reinforce some of these little teeny wavelets. Now I've got wet paint here, so it's, these marks will they run the risk of them being contaminated. So that, this is really calligraphy here. These are marks that I don't wish to blend all that much, and so I'm just going to make a few of them here. They are going to help define the foreground in the same way we did before. We sort of laid the groundwork on the detail in the foreground. Bring the foreground forward. And simultaneously bring the background backward, right? So if you want to make the background look like its background, one of the ways to do that is just by building up a detail on the foreground. That's good. All right. This is my thin round. Start with the room, finish with a needle. This is the needle, proverbial needle too, right? So if you have a steady hand, go for it. You can also use another stick or a brush to steady your hand. You might use a maul stick, whatever you want. I'm going to freehand this one. Good luck, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to telegraph it. Telegraph, this means without paint, without brush hitting the surface. I want to make a little mark there that helps define that contour. Just clean it up. That's all. This one I will steady my hand a little bit. Closing in. Let's get some more dark paint on our accent brush. We see a little flag waving back here. We are poets, not reporters. So I love the snap of this flag. And I'm not even look at the reference anymore. I'm just going to do my own. Pop, right? Poets, not reporters. And I don't even have to have the little string. Your brain can fill that in, or if you are the control type, you can certainly put it in there. But I'm good. sometimes like to leave some things out. Little accents. There's a string here too. Oh, here's where I screw it up, right? So I'm going to just drag from here to here. So I'm looking at where I am, I'm looking at where I'm going. And try to do it in one quick little stroke. That's all I need. Okay, good. Yeah, definitely good. So now the fun part. There's a little flag on the back of the boat. Little marks. These teeny little marks are complemented by the larger marks. Things derive their interest from juxtaposing things. So they become interesting. You have something big next to something small, something dark next to something light. I'm going to take a soft brush and just clean that up a little bit. And so these small accents actually make the painting more interesting. They complement some much larger shapes. Okay, now the fun part, putting people in. Looking at the little teeny gray shapes that I see on the boat that are not people. Things like this thing, not sure what it is. It's just little things. I'm squinting my eyes anyway. There's another little gray thing here. You don't even have to know what it is. These are abstract at this point. Your eyes and your brain will look at the larger shapes first. And the small stuff, you just sort of, your brain believes it, you know? Just, it trusts that it's just stuff. Something looks like this over here. They're just marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're just marks. You look at the photo reference and you see them. Obviously, this is the mount or whatever it is that houses the mast. Now we get some dark paint. We put in some people. Now there's a lot of people on this boat. You can put your family in there, your friends, whatever you want to do. But I like the arrangement of people on this boat. There seems to be a large cluster in the middle. Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. But you can watch what I do in cases like this. There you go. It never happened. Okay, so there's a big concentration of clustered people in the middle. And let's do that right in the center of the mast. They're just teeny little shapes. That's all they are. They're just calligraphic shapes, aren't they? There's a couple right here overlapping each other. But because it's wet paint, I'm picking up paint every time the brush goes down. And so I clean it off, reload it. Little downward strokes. The person is sitting, maybe there's one standing. Edna and Jeff. Here's Mr. Montgomery. He was at the wedding. His sister Irene is over here. They were fighting. Put it on the boat, so she got away from him. Excellent. And over here, the Murphys. Excellent. We have people on a boat. Let's put a few more. That's the guy over here. We have ourselves a Gundalow here. I think just a few more accents and I think we're good. Yeah, good to go. Let's grab some white and put some sea foam in front of that boat and behind the boat. How about that? So this is pure white on my brush. Let's see. So now these strokes are all careful, right? We've been moving steadily along. We're very careful now. So I look 3 times, I telegraph, right? So my brush makes the movement before I actually do it. Voila. Do it with 1 stroke, you're better off. And at the edge of the boat, there's teeny little wavelets. So I'm gonna control my hand here. Black and brush up. And there's a little couple of kisses there. Load the brush up again, because every time you put wet paint into wet paint, it picks up some wet paint on the brush. So make sure it's clean. At the back of the boat, it's leaving a little trail. Again, telegraph. Load the brush, I breathe a little bit. I look where it's beginning and where it's going to end. Take a breath, blow out, breathe out slowly, and just kind of do it. So here we go. Take a clean brush and gently go over that to soften the edge. Yeah. Soften the edge. Amazing, the virtual soft brush. Okay. Soft brush with soft edge rather. All right, let's put a few more accents in. It seems to be some water, little light notes flicking. So I'm gonna get something pretty close to a white, with a value of 8 or 9. I love accent time. It sort of brings it all together. And again, it works its way down here. I'm not sure what's happening, but there's some sort of reflective quality that's coming down here. And so we're just gonna let the brush dance and do its thing. And again, it's in the water, so we're gonna soften it. We'll get another clean brush. And we'll just kind of drag it over very little bit. Just drag it. Looks like there's a sparkle in the water back there as well behind the Gundalow. And so I'm just gonna drag some light notes the same way back there. Overlap, right? So we'll put some here so they sort of disappear behind the Gundalow. Soft brush, softening, right? So they're in the background, soft edges of the scene. We like the light notes, but we don't want them to be so, we don't want them to speak so loud. We quiet them down by softening them. All right, not too shabby, huh? All right, I think we might be done with our Gundalow. Let's take a look and see if something improved upon there. I can noodle this all day long. The only thing I'll do is I will noodle the background where the trees meet the sky, just really to keep the texture back there. And I'm actually going to use, I'm not going to use a small brush like you think I would. I'll use the brush that I started with. And this is clean. I will muddy it up a little bit. I'll use my, try to like match the value of that sky. Maybe something lighter, right? So this is maybe a value 5. Just going to like touch and tap. That's too hard of an edge back there. We want it to look organic. Look at your photo reference. You can see there's little, trees are organic and not hard edges. So I'll just do a few and then I'll stop so you can see the difference. I'm just kind of like manipulating, like touching, caressing, and kissing the area where the tops of those trees meet the distant headlands. So look at the left side, which I've just manipulated. And on the right side, you feel the difference? See how that feels like it's further away? Just because you've manipulated the edges? It pulls the Gundalow forward inadvertently. So again, I'm just taking the tip of the brush, and just kissing the edge. It's like manipulating. It's like a kinetic movement. So a little up, down, a little scribble, if you will. Feels to me like the tops of trees. so far away. It's pretty decent. If I do say so myself, we have a little bungalow. Not too shabby for the Alabama bungalow. And so we'll just kind of clean up some things, and you know, you can spend as much time as you want with these things. Super fun. I do to myself maybe like about an hour or so. If you limit your time, you get less noodling. Because I can noodle, let me tell you. I like detail. Get carried away very easily. Before the introduction, 3 hours went by, I don't know where I was. This line could be, you know, the detail and texture come forward. And even though this probably isn't necessary, with a small number 2 brush, I'm gonna try to make it feel the feel of that. I know just call this done. Good. That, my friends, is that. Thank you so much for your time today. This was fun. This really was. I'm going to paint on here with liquid, with soft, and with my round. Signature. Well, thank you so much for your time, everybody. Hope you had fun, and take as much time with this as you need.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It's something about. Let me stop sharing at this point. I think we're done. Keeps it more expressive, less moving. And after all, we're more interested in. Let's not hurt my voice. An expressive representation. Let me see if I can shut myself up. Let me just right? We are poets, not reporters. Okay, good.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh, before we go, let's give Todd a round of applause. This was a fantastic workshop, and I learned quite a bit about painting, and I'm sure everyone had some, you know, good lessons as well. So, Todd, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And if anyone has any questions, just feel free to email them to me, and then I will forward them into Todd, and we'll get your questions answered. So thank you. It's fabulous.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you.
Thanks.
Thank you.